Hi everyone, my name is Morgan and I'd like to welcome you to Getting Started with Google Earth Studio, the fifth event in our Journey to Geo for Good training series. I'm joining you live as your tour guide as we journey to the Geo for Good 2021 Summit. So here's how it'll work. First, we'll play the Google Earth Studio training we recorded just last week. During the training, please ask lots of questions using the Ask a Question button just below the video, and we'll answer them in our live Q&A with our Google product experts following the video. Enjoy the training, and I'll be back on the live stream with the product experts to answer all of your questions. If we're unable to get to all of the questions on air, we will answer them by typing them in the answer below your question, so please stick around for the whole event. Thanks, and I'll see you again shortly.
Hello everybody and welcome to today's Google Earth Outreach training. My name is Caroline Scott and I'm a Google News Lab teaching fellow based here in the UK. Now I work as part of the Google News Initiative where we teach journalists and we provide them with resources that will help them to do their jobs more effectively within the current media landscape. But today's training is for all of you. So whatever profession you're from or background you have, you're very welcome to join us as we learn how to get started with Google Earth Studio. It's an exciting animation tool. It's there for all of us. There's so many different case studies of different ways we can use this tool, and we're going to learn how to use it today. It's using Google Earth satellite and 3D imagery. There's so much to play with. So do stick with us, ask us any questions you have as we go through, and we'll have a good Q&A session at the end. Now, this workshop is one of many events that you'll find on our digital events hub. So do make sure you're registered there. I've put the URL on screen. We've got upcoming live mapping tool workshops, and there's so many resources on there. So on-demand training to watch back in your own time, and of course, live events. So do head over to Google Earth Outreach and explore all the opportunities there. But without further ado, let's crack on. Let's jump straight into the tool and see what we can create with Google Earth Studio and how it might be beneficial for us. So I'm sure many of you by this stage will be familiar with the large amount of satellite, aerial and 3D imagery we have here at Google Earth. And this ranges, of course, from large-scale geological features to individual city buildings. You know, maybe you've used the satellite imagery in the past to create your own maps. Maybe you've developed an interactive project, or even kind of, you know, just got hold of that little yellow man and dragged him onto the map to explore a new area and delve into Street View. Well, Google Earth, you know, of course, we have all of this material we can use and explore, but Google Earth Studio, it uses the same bank of satellite imagery, but it's a browser-based animation tool, okay? So we can use this tool at Google Earth Studio to create draw-dropping animations, exciting videos that you can use within your own projects. So let's take a look at some of the visuals you can produce with this tool. Let's roll the video, please.
U.S. women's national team will be celebrating their record-setting third Women's World Cup trophy in the 5 boroughs, with the ticker tape parade later today in Northern Ireland.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? I know when most people see that for the first time, they're like, I can actually do that. I can produce it myself. And, I'm here to tell you today that you do not need any prior video editing experience, animation experience, coding, all of that. You can do this and create these animations within Google Earth Studio yourself. So we're going to dive into the tool in a second. And it's a fantastic tool because it is updated all of the time. There are new cities in 3D being added regularly. And, the great thing is it's quite an intuitive tool. So, once you get started with it, you can really kind of delve in and really get stuck in and, just develop your skills as you start practicing. Okay. So what I'm going to do is show you how to quickly start with the tool. And then we're going to talk about recent updates and use cases. Okay. So if you haven't already signed up to use Google Earth Studio, I know some of you in advance of this workshop today will already have access. If you haven't done, there is a link to do so under this video. Usually you'll get approval of 1 day from yourself applying. So if you don't have access yet, that's absolutely fine. You can just watch the demo as I'm going through. And of course, you can watch this back later. If you have already got access, then feel free to open up Google Earth Studio in a different tab, pull it apart so you can see me in one window and Google Earth Studio in another, and you can follow along with me. So without further ado, let's jump into the tool and take a better look. Okay, so here on the screen, you'll see the main interface, the home screen for Google Earth Studio. As you can see, it's already looking pretty cool and exciting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through the user interface, how it works, and what you're going to do to just jump in and get started. Okay, so on the screen here, you'll see I have the options to create a blank project, or I can open a project. Now, a project is basically a new animation you're going to create. So that might be a new video you want to produce for a different story you're working on. That might be a different visualization for a different client you're working for, or of course, a different video for your YouTube channel, your social media. Whatever that is, you can work on several different projects and store them all on your computer and work on them at the same time. Now, I can, of course, start a blank new project completely from scratch. Usually we do this on more advanced or longer animations because we are literally starting from a completely blank timeline, blank project. And you'll see what I mean by these words as we dive into it. So if I was to click on blank project, you can see there that I have the options to rename my project. So I can call this anything I like. Obviously, it's really important to name your projects as you're working through them so you don't get confused by just the words untitled or new project every time you're working on a new session. I can choose here whether I want to work with Earth, Moon, or Mars. I can also choose my dimensions for the project. Okay, so this is your frame aspect ratio. This is the size of the project, whether you're working horizontally, square, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is literally the size. It will be automatically set to 1920 by 1080. So this is going to give you a horizontal landscape project. And you can see here, I can also pick my duration in frames, or I can pick the duration of my project in time. Okay, so you can see here, this is set to 15 seconds. I can change that if I want to, or I can set that to the equivalent in frames. Okay, and you'll understand what I mean as we delve in. Now, you'll also see here on the right-hand side, it says frame rate. Now, if you don't understand what frame rate is, don't be put off. All frame rate is the frequency at which consecutive images are captured or displayed within your video. Because if you think about it, a video is just picture after picture after picture to give the illusion of movement, isn't it? It's a little bit like a scrapbook. You're flicking through and you see the movement unfold. So this is how we can set up a new project. But what I would like for us to do today is to press cancel there. And I want us to tap that little downwards arrow there you can see on the right-hand side. So when I tap that, can you see it says quick starts? Now, essentially, a quick start is a template that we can use. It's already been set up by the lovely folks at Google Earth Studio so that we can just input where we want to go around the world, where we want to be, where we want our video to start and end. And we can produce an animation in a matter of minutes, okay? So you can see here we've got several options on the screen. We've got zoom to, which is basically zooming from high up into a specific location. Okay, so we're zooming from a point of high altitude right into the Earth or wherever we're choosing to zoom to. We also have orbit. This is a circular orbit around a specific location or a building. We also have point to point. So a point to point will basically enable you to go between well, it's up to 6 different locations, and you're basically creating this beautiful smooth animation where we're going between all of these locations. And spiral is essentially a really smooth zoomed in orbit into a particular location there. Okay, so it's gradually shrinking, it's a descending orbit. So what we're going to do is we're going to click one of these templates and we're going to dive straight into the tool. So just today we're going to click zoom 2. I think that's quite a nice fun one to get started, and we're going to click start there at the bottom right of the screen. Okay, so once you've clicked start, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to set your point of interest. Now, what is a point of interest? That is the point of interest on the world that you want to zoom into. Okay, so here we have Earth. You can see it on the screen there. Beautiful Earth from outer space. We're looking at the Earth as a whole. And it says search to set your point of interest. Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to go to Sydney Opera House. So I'm going to start typing that in, and you can see it will pop up. It will give you some suggestions. And we're going to say, okay, I've chosen the zoom template. So we're going to zoom all the way in to Sydney Opera House. Okay. Now, once you click on that, you can see I'm at Sydney Opera House. What it's done is the tool has chosen this location and it zoomed right into that area. Okay, now, as you can see, we're kind of looking at Sydney Opera House from a bird's eye view, aren't we? We're literally dead on top of the Opera House. Now, what we can do is you can see on screen, it says we can use our mouse or we can use the keypad to change the camera position, okay? So we can pan, we can tilt, we can move around our object. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to tap this screen so we get this blue line all around. And we're going to use, I'm using my keypad at the moment. I'm holding down shift and the downward arrow. And can you see now I can use this to pan and tilt around the Sydney Opera House. And you can see this is a beautiful 3D image here of the Sydney Opera House. So we can choose this however we want this to look. As you can see, I can move around to my heart's desire. I can zoom in, I can zoom out. And what I'm going to do just for now is I'm going to keep it as a bird's eye view because we can play around with this later. So let's just say we're really happy with however we've set it now. So at home, you might have chosen to set it a little bit further down, a little bit further up, however you want it to look. So essentially what we've done at this stage is we've chosen our point of interest. We've told the tool we want to zoom in to this image here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tap that little green arrow on the right-hand side. And now you can see I'm going to pick my starting altitude. So this is the starting altitude of where your animation is going to kick off. Okay, so here you can see I'm all the way in outer space. I can zoom into the globe. I can zoom out of the globe. It's already going to be set to the area of the globe that you've zoomed into. So you can see the right country there. But let's choose just for fun. We're going to go all the way out. And now this is where the fun begins, okay? So we're going to click this little green arrow on the right-hand side, and you will see that your animation, just like magic, has already been created for you, okay? So what you've done is you've chosen your template, you've chosen where you want to zoom into, so that's your target, and we've chosen our starting altitude. Now you can see here at the bottom where it says 5 seconds, basically I can change this to the length of the video that I want. So at the moment it's 5 seconds, and I don't know about you, but I think 5 seconds is a little bit too quick to zoom from outer space to the Sydney Opera House. So let's make this a little bit longer. So I'm going to put 15 seconds, and you see as soon as I click 15 seconds and I click out of it on this dead space here, I'm zooming in much more slowly to my point of interest there at the end. Okay, so I'm starting from outer space and I'm zooming. So if you're doing this along with me at home, do choose a little bit of a longer time, experiment with those, see how you go. And once you're happy with that, we're going to click this little tick icon on the right-hand side. And now we are in our editor. Okay, now, as I say, if you have never had any experience with any video editing software in the past, you are completely new to animation, completely new to making things visual and exciting. If you've never played around with this kind of stuff before, do not be put off by the user interface with the buttons and the symbols all around, okay? Because it's very, very simplistic once you actually just get practicing, okay? And I'm going to talk you through how this works. But if you're happy with your animation, as it was just there, we can just export this now. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But just to give you a quick brief overview of the user interface as it stands at the moment. So essentially you have your editor. This is, you know, as a whole screen, this is where the magic's going to happen. This is where you're going to create your amazing animation. So up here, we have what's called the top bar. Okay, so this bar here, which has all these little icons on. Now, you can probably guess that this big one here, this play icon, is going to enable your video to play out, your animation to play. Now, these icons here will enable you to jump to the next frame, to a previous frame, and to the end of your animation and to the beginning of that animation, okay? And you can choose to repeat, to loop the playback if you choose to. Now, this middle bit in the center of your screen, this is called your viewport. Now, this is where you're going to actually watch back your animation as you're editing it, okay? So you need to be able to see what you're working on. So this is where you're actually going to see that video play out as we zoom into the Sydney Opera House in this example. And down here at the bottom, this is our third section of the screen. This is our editor. Now, the editor is made up of two sections. One is your attributes list on the left-hand side of the screen, and the other one is your timeline over here on the right-hand side. And your timeline is where you're going to make changes to your animation. So if you want your camera to swoop to a different destination, if you want the angles to change in any particular part of the animation, you can do all of that down here at the timeline. And on the left, and we'll look at this in just a moment, this is where you can change your attributes. So things like your camera positioning, your camera target, and your camera rotation, these drop-down menus that you can click into, this is all about where you're actually going to be able to see your animation take place, okay, and how it's going to end up looking. So we're going to dive into that in a second. But what I'd like you all to do is to gaze your eyes on this vertical red line. Now, this vertical red line is really, really important, and that's called your playhead. So what your playhead is it's essentially telling you whereabouts in your animation you're editing or you're looking at. Now, you'll see if I tap and hold and drag this along the screen, all I've done is click and drag, you'll see the animation is changing as I'm moving through it. Yeah, you can see that moving. Now, you can see this number going up here on the playhead. You see 110, 111, 114. Okay, so that just basically means the amount of frames you are into your animation. So you can see here, I'm at the 142nd frame. I move along, 154th frame, I move along, 189th frame. Okay, so if you think a video, as I said at the beginning, a video is just lots and lots of images played back really, really fast to give the illusion of movement. Okay, and that's all this is. Okay, so I'm just going through bit by bit by bit. As you can see, lots of different individual photos. Now, if I wanted to play this, I'm either going to tap the space bar or I'm going to tap this play icon here at the top. And you'll see that as my playhead is moving along my editor at the bottom, you'll see that the image that I'm seeing on the screen is changing. Okay, can you all see that? So as this is going up, my image is changing. And when it gets to the end there, it will just loop back to the beginning. So I can play this through as many times as I want, as many times as I want. Okay. So if I want to stop it, I'm just going to press the pause button or, space bar. And I can be very happy with my animation. Now, you'll see here we've got a target on our screen. This is because we've set the Sydney Opera House as a target. This can help us with our panning and our tilting as we're setting the look and feel of our animation. So don't worry about that too much for now. But let's say we're really, really happy with our animation and we love the way that we're zooming into Earth. Remember, we followed that template. All we did is we put Sydney Opera House in there and we set the starting altitude. And all we've done is we've said over 15 seconds, I want us to zoom in. And as you can see there, we've got a little bit of dead space here where we're just going to pause on our final setting there within our animation. So if we're happy with that, that's absolutely fine. You don't even need to do anything else, okay? Because look how quick that took me. If I did that without any explanation, probably take under 2 minutes. It's super, super fast. So what I would like you to do is, if you're happy with your animation right now, and of course we'll get onto more advanced things in a second, but I want to draw your attention to these two icons here at the top. Now, this one here that looks like a photograph, if I was to tap that, what it's going to do is going to save the current frame to a JPEG image on my computer, okay? So whatever current frame it is, remember that's whatever the playhead is on, and this view, that's going to save that as an image. Of course, we can move our playhead to here, and now it's going to save this as an image, and that target will not be exported in the final image, okay? So if I want to save an image, let's say I wanted to put something on my Instagram, or I wanted something as part of a story, that's going to export with the attribution on the bottom there. However, let's say I wanted to render the whole entire animation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the top here and click render. So when I say render, it essentially means export and glue all of these bits together and save it to, to use later on within my work. Now, you can see here on the left-hand side, my animation is going to play out. I can see that because this bar along the bottom is moving through all of those frames. I can choose to pause this and move this along as I want. So just have a play around with that at home. Okay, so now on the right-hand side, you can see I can do two different things, okay? So I can choose to save this animation as an image sequence or a video, okay? So I have the two different options there, okay? So my image sequence is essentially going to download as a zip file to my computer with lots and lots of images that form all of those different frames, and it's going to save to a folder on my computer. Now, why would I want to use that? Well, maybe I want this animation and I want to export it later on. So I want all of the different individual photos because I want to use those in an article. Or maybe I'm great at coding and I want to create some scrollable storytelling, which we've seen from a lot of different news organizations lately, and I'll show you an example of that later. Or maybe I want to import all of these images into something like After Effects and add on more layers on top of that. So you can export as an image sequence if you like, but you also, and this is a really exciting new feature, you're able to render this to the cloud as a video. Okay, so you can see here on the right-hand side, I can save this as a video by just toggling that on, okay? And that's basically going to save your whole animation as a video, as an MP4 that you can use. This might be a piece of B-roll for a video you're producing for YouTube. This might be something you want to put into your news report. This might be a video for your website, and so on and so forth. So there's lots of different options there that you can pick from. Now, if you don't see this option to choose video, that's because Google Earth Studio require you to apply for access, and you can do so via the link underneath this video, okay? That will take you a page which will send you to a form that looks a little bit like this. And this is where you're going to apply for access to try cloud rendering. This is available to all of you now, and you'll be a tester in this being able to render for videos. So as I say, this isn't a feature that has been around all the time. This is new and it's very exciting. It's something that will enable all of us, regardless as if we have any other post-production software on our computer, to create these beautiful videos. Okay, so at the moment, if you do not have this option to pick video MP4 to render to the cloud, your export option will look a little bit like this, okay? So you will not have that MP4 option. So if it looks a little bit like this, don't worry. You're just going to tap that link at the bottom of this video. You're going to go and apply for access to cloud rendering. Once you get access, then it will look exactly like this, okay? So it's very exciting. Do have a play around with that. Now, if I just scroll down a bit, I'm just going to talk you through some of these options. So you can see here, I can choose the dimension of my video, which we set at the beginning, but you can alter this here if you like. Now, you can also choose what frames to export. So choose, you might just want to export that last bit of the animation. You might want to just get this bit here in the middle. You might want to just get that end bit, or you might choose to want the whole animation. So you can pick which part to export to render as a video there, or as, of course, images. Now, if we scroll down further, we can also choose where we want the attribution to be on our video. Now, you'll notice here on the right-hand side, of my video, you can see it says Google Earth. This is because Google Earth and its contributors need to be, you need to have the information. It needs to be attributed to them. So you can choose where this is going to go. In the top left, I can choose the top center. I can use bottom left. You can have fun with this, play around with where you want it to go on your animation. You do need to make sure you attribute this correctly though, guys, when you are using this imagery. So just for now, let's choose bottom right. And as you can see down here at the bottom, you can choose between your map style. Map style is really cool because basically this will allow you to control how much information you are giving to your audience with the mapping that you have here. Okay, so we have clean, and clean is basically where you don't have any borders, labels, places, roads on your video. So it looks as it does now. You see how it's completely clean. I don't have any roads or anything like that marked on it. If I was to go to, let's say, exploration, now if I scroll through, you can see all of a sudden I get all of these labels pop up. You can see there at the left-hand side of my screen, I get borders, labels, places, and roads pop up as I'm playing my video through. And if I go down here to everything, you'll still get those borders, labels, places and roads, but you'll also get transit, you'll get landmarks, and you'll get water. Can you see there as well? So there's 3 different options you can choose with your map style and with your labeling, okay? So it's up to you completely what you decide to pick and how you want to export that. For this example here, I'm just going to pick clean because I think that looks really nice as we zoom in. And when you're happy, all you're going to do is you're going to click submit, okay? And what that will do is it will start rendering your video and exporting it in the option that you've chosen here. So as an image sequence or a video. Okay, so as you can see, super, super easy. I choose a template. I set my, my point B and my point A, so my altitude and where I want it to zoom to. And I just go to render, and here I am. I click my settings and I can save it. Easy peasy, right? So let's just go back now. So you can just finish there if you want to, not this workshop, but in terms of like your animation. So you can either click submit and just finish your animation there. Or if you want to add some changes and really add some panache, some sparkle to your animation, what we're going to do is we're going to look back on this editor and we're going to see all of the different options that we can play around with. Okay, because we might choose to change the angle of view that we see here in our animation. We might want our camera to go somewhere else. We might want to add some different movements to that or to change the speeding and so on and so forth. Okay, so the first thing what I want to do is I want to drag my playhead along, and we can see there our final point that we've set already. Do you remember we chose Sydney Opera House and we chose to look at this from a bird's eye view? Now, some of you might have noticed that we've got these little diamond icons there on our editor. Can you guys see that? So we can see them on the timeline there. There's these little diamond editors. Now you can see that they match up to a certain amount of longitude, latitude, altitude. And as I scroll down to different points between our camera rotation, our camera target, and our camera positioning. Okay. So basically these are called keyframes, and try not to overthink these. Essentially, a keyframe is essentially an order. You are telling the editor that at this point of my video, at this frame, I want the visuals to look in this way. So I want exactly that viewpoint to be in my video, okay? So you can see here at frame 360, we have already previously, remember at the beginning, we previously told the editor, I want to look at Sydney Opera House from that view. Now, as you can see, when I'm moving the mouse around, or I can, play around with my keypad, I can move this however I want. I can change this if I decide to do so. However, now my keyframes that were blue here on the left-hand side have now moved to yellow. And that's because the editor is saying, whoa, hold on a second there. You already told me that you wanted exactly this camera position and exactly this camera target and exactly this camera rotation. And now you're telling me something different. Okay. So if you want to change this positioning there, all you've got to do is pick what you're happy with and then reset the keyframe. Okay. So you're going to keyframe all the attributes in this list here, in your attribute list, to your new location. Now, if I change something like this and I change my viewpoint, but I don't set the keyframes and keyframe all of those attributes, when I click off, can you see now it's going to go back to that original position because it remembers the keyframe that I set at the beginning of the editing process. Okay, so let's say I want to change that viewpoint now. I'm going to make sure my playhead is on that keyframe, and then I'm going to go and click on my viewport here at the top, in the middle of the screen there at the top there, and I'm going to use my camera to basically change. I'm just clicking on the keypad now. I'm holding shift and my down arrows, and you can see I can pan and tilt just by using the arrows here. Zoom in and out without holding down shift, and you can see I can move around. So let's say, for example, I've changed my mind. I don't want a bird's eye view on the Sydney Opera House. Now I want to be looking at Sydney Opera House from the side. Now I've set my location, and this is what I like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the left-hand side, and I'm going to tap this blue icon that says Keyframe all the attributes. So if I tap that, can you see, watch here, this is going to go blue. It's going to turn to blue. And what that's saying is, okay, you've changed your keyframe. I'm now going to be in this new position, okay? So now if we play our video, watch what happens. Our animation is going to change because now we've told the editor, I want to change that end positioning, okay? So we've set our beginning and we've set our end. You see how that's moving to this new position that we've set. And that's all down to keyframes. So keyframes are our friend because they're a way that we can tell the animation what to do, tell the camera target where to be, tell the camera positioning and so on where to be. Okay, so that's how we change a keyframe. Remember, we're going to place the playhead on the specific frame we want to change, select the viewport, change the angle, and then make sure this icon is blue and fully pressed. Okay, now what happens if we want to add another keyframe? So all we're going to do is we're going to move this playhead along to where we want the video to change again. So let's say around here, we want the video to slightly zoom in on the Opera House. What we can do is we can tap on our viewport and we're going to use our mouse or our keypad, however we want to edit, and we're going to move around. So let's say we would like it to be about this close. I think that looks quite nice with the bridge in the background. So let's say we're really happy with this view. What we're going to do is at this point, remember, we haven't set the keyframe. So all we've done is we're just playing around with this viewport. We need to save that keyframe. So we're going to tap this little diamond icon, so to keyframe all the attributes, and there can we see we have the keyframes put in place. So we've set that exact longitude, latitude and altitude positioning. We've also set here the camera rotation, the pan and tilt, and we've changed our camera target there on screen as well. So now if I was to play this out, we've got those two keyframes in, and we chose the second keyframe there to zoom into our Sydney Opera House, okay? So you can see there, we've really changed the animation just in a few clicks by just moving in. Now, some of you might think, okay, Caroline, you're zooming in, but it looks a little bit fast. You know, you're moving. It doesn't look very, very lifelike, does it? Because at the end of this, it kind of just stops. It stops abruptly, like we're in a car. We've just pressed brake. It almost stops that video. So what I would like to draw your eyes to are these little diamonds. They're like little diamond symbols on the left and right of the keyframes. And these are our easing icons. Okay, so when I say easing, kind of the clues in the name, we're going to ease into a keyframe and ease out of the keyframe to make it a bit more realistic for the movement. Now you'll see here that this keyframe automatically has easing left and right. Now we can add easing to ease into our keyframe or to ease out of our keyframe by just tapping and right clicking, and we can choose ease in, ease out, or any of these other options, okay? So ease in, it basically means you're going to slow down when you enter that keyframe. So the camera movement, rather than just going bam and stopping, is going to ease in as soon as it gets to this keyframe. If we choose ease out, that means we're easing out of a keyframe. I'm going to speed up when we leave that keyframe. So here we want to ease in, so it stops gradually once we get to that zoom. And it's very, very slight, but it just makes it a little bit more realistic. So we're easing in into that keyframe. You see how it makes it a little bit more realistic, okay? So you can have a lot of fun with keyframes. You know, you can add keyframes in as much as you want around here. And, you know, you can really have fun with the camera positioning, how it gets from A to B. If you're not happy with how the camera moves, for example, if you're not happy with this movement here, where we're zooming into the location and we're coming in here, we can choose to basically open up our curve editor. And we're going to do that by pressing Command A and highlighting all of these keyframes. And if I choose on my attribute list over here, longitude, for example, I'm going to tap that. I'll open up the curve editor and I can use these little circular icons to move the positioning, and you can see how the position of the camera and the movement is going to change. So this is I'm in longitude at the moment. So within the curve editor, if I was to play this now, can you see the movement is slightly different? I'm moving left and right, or I can move over here. I'm moving right and then left. So, you know, so you can have real good fun with this. You can maybe whip it. Okay, so obviously it depends on how you want to play with this. You can really have a little bit of fun, get some really kind of cool drone-like feels to it. You can just basically move it however you like. So that's in your curve editor, okay? So we've got easing to make it more realistic, more flowing, a lot more lifelike. And then you've got your curve editor to really control where your animation is going to go, okay? So play around with that. If you want to jump back, you're going to click on longitude here. Now, I should also mention that rather than just control the viewport, the view in your viewport, you can use these little numbers here on the left-hand side to control your view as well. So just by moving this left and right, so I'm just tapping and holding, I can choose the longitude and latitude, or I can just tap in and I can change that figure completely. So if I put 153, for example, you see how that's just going to jump. Okay, now if you press Command Z, you're just going to undo and go back. Undo is always your friend when you're learning a new tool, I know from previous experience. So over here on the left-hand side where you've got your camera attributes, it is definitely worth playing around with these, playing around with the rotation, target, and position to see how this moves. You'll notice that once you close one of these, it turns into a square. So your keyframe will turn into a little square icon there to tell you it's closed. You can also add other attributes to this list if you want to. So if I click on add attributes, you can see I can change the camera target, my field of view, my time of day. This is quite a fun one. So for example, if I click time of day, I can choose to look at Sydney Opera House in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day or at 2 o'clock in the morning or at 5 p.m. in the evening, however you want your animation to look. You can also choose to toggle clouds on or off, and so on and so forth. So really playing around with these attributes to make your animation personalized to what you need it for. Okay, so once you're happy with your entire animation, remember playing it through, just keep watching it through, you know, have a play around with the keyframes, get to know the keypad, use the left and right and up and down arrows, have a feel with the curve editor with your easing icons, and really feel how this is going to look. So as you can see, you can really play around with it and have a little bit of fun. Now, when you go to render, of course, it's exactly the same steps as we did before. So we're going to tap video or image sequence, make sure we're happy with all of these, and we're going to click submit. Okay, so just a reminder, if you haven't got that MP4 option, just make sure you click that link at the bottom of the screen and fill out this form, okay, because that will give you the options to render as an MP4, which is all obviously really exciting. Okay, so now what I would like you to do, guys, is I would like to show you some case studies of how to use this tool, because I know when you find out how to use a new tool, it's really exciting and you're like, oh, that looks so cool. Now I can animate all this Earth content. But really, you might be thinking, but how do I actually put this into practice within my own work? How can I tell stories with this? How can I use this imagery to better explain something I'm working on? Well, don't fear, because I have a few examples that I would like to share with you now. So I'm going to talk you through some case studies, how you might use the tool yourself, and of course, happy to get some inspiration. So as I'm talking you through these, please do make some notes, jot some ideas down, because as I say, there's loads of different ways we can use this technology, whether we use this as a whole, so whether we're doing a whole animation completely within Google Earth Studio, or whether we're just going to use a tiny snippet to just demonstrate something or add context to an idea. So our first option is, of course, from the Summer Games. You know, Tokyo has some amazing 3D imagery, and this can be found within Google Earth Studio, as you can see here. And we can really take audiences on a journey of all of these different athletic venues, okay? So you can see here in this animation, we're soaring over Tokyo. We're going to different stadiums and different Summer Game venues of where some of the competitions took place. And you can see here that the animation is really having fun with panning and zooming and tilting around all of these different venues, okay? So rather than just thinking you need to use one of the templates and just go to one position, you can actually start a blank template and you can find all of these different locations. There is a little magnifying glass at the top left of the screen. I'm sure you guys will have seen it when you opened up the editor, that you can just search for a new location and you can jump between those. So, you know, thinking about how we can transport audiences and help them to visualize something and take them to a new location they haven't seen before can be really useful as storytellers, as journalists, and of course, you know, as people that are blogging and talking to people and audiences and just connecting with people outside. Now, I mentioned earlier about scrolly telling. Now, scrolly telling, it's a funny word, but basically it's all about, this is if you're good at coding, by the way, if you know how to work with coding in the back end of your website, you can actually use the images that you export from Google Earth Studio, and you can put them into the back end of an article. So this is an example from ABC, and they show this amazing piece on Everest, where essentially as you scrolled through the story, you could essentially see the story come up the screen. Okay, so you're basically reading this story, but you're soaring over Everest at the same time. It makes it a lot more engaging for all of us who, you know, we don't have great attention spans nowadays, do we? So having this really visual content at the same time as reading a story is really, really exciting. Another example here, this is from El País. They're a Spanish language daily newspaper in Spain. Now they've created this visualization. I've got a GIF of it here, and it shows how far the lid of a chemical reactor flew through the air after an explosion in a Spanish chemical plant. So you can see the distance between these two areas in Spain. And basically they're using this animation that they got from Google Earth Studio to essentially show how far this lid flew through the air. It weighed a ton, it actually hit somebody's house. But just to put it in context for their audience, okay? So we can use this brilliant satellite imagery to actually help our audiences to understand what we're trying to tell them. Now, of course, we can also use Earth Studio in travel reporting. When we think of Earth Studio, a lot of times people do think of travel because we want to explore somewhere new that we haven't seen. We want to go somewhere different. So this is an example I'm going to play you in a moment from National Geographic. They literally took audiences on a tour of the Spanish trek from Santiago de Compostela to Finisterre. And, you know, basically by adding music, by adding text, by adding animation, we really saw this animation unfold, and it's a lot more engaging for audiences. So please, let's play the video. Okay, so you can see there how well the visuals there went with the music. You know, it's almost kind of hypnotizing. I just kind of wanted to watch that all the time, because once you add kind of the writing, you add the visuals, it kind of makes it a lot more exciting and a lot more great to explore this area. It's as if you're kind of a bird in real time, right? So we can really take our audiences on a journey, whether we're journalists, whether we're storytellers, whether we are, you know, selling a project or a product, or whether we're explaining a project, or whether we are trying to help our audiences understand something. By literally taking them on the journey with us, I think it can be really helpful. And here, this is another example. This is a visualization of the Tamarack fire in Northern California and Nevada this year. So this video was created by the CEDR Digital Corps. Now, they work with the aim to create solutions to challenges during disaster reports. Okay, so as of the morning of July 22nd, you can see here, this fire was actually across 43,900 acres of land. And, you know, by putting this into a visual demonstration that we can see here, we can just see just how ferocious this fire was. We can see the key at the bottom. There's been an overlay added to this, and we can just see how the fire spread. So it really helps our audiences to understand this visualization in much more detail. Okay, so using this software to actually help our audiences to not only understand a point or to tell a story, but to kind of visually sketch it in their minds. I think it helps audiences to understand. Okay, so whether we're journalists or whether we're not, whether we are conservationists, whether we are scientists, whatever background we're coming from, we can use this technology. And this last example I'm going to play now is it visualizes something else which is really kind of relevant to the scientific world. It visualizes the air quality in California from 2015 to 2017. Okay, so the imagery that you can see on screen here, it was created because the technology company Aclima and Google, they made basically a massive air pollution data set freely available to the scientific community. And in this video you can see on screen, it shows how the nitrogen dioxide levels across the area are looking. And of course, this can help us to understand the figures and trends as they appear. So to really understand data and to help us see this in a much more appealing light, we can use this imagery. So as you can tell, there's so many different ways we can use it. If we're using it by ourselves for a long form video, whether we want to use just parts of it, maybe we want to tell stories, maybe we want to explain a piece of information, maybe we want to add context to what we're doing and the information we're giving our audiences. Okay, so whatever profession you're from or background you're in, I would definitely urge you to experiment with this tool. And of course, let us know how you get on. Okay, guys, as I say, it's one of those tools that you really need to just practice with. So jump into the tool, create a template, create your own animation from one of the templates and just get stuck in, play around with the keyframes. It doesn't matter if at first it doesn't look amazing. It will do once you get really familiar with learning how to pan and tilt and move around the globe. Okay, so as I say, I'm really excited to hear some of your comments and questions now. So I believe now we're going to have time for a Q&A. Thank you very much.
All right, welcome to our live Q&A for getting started with Google Earth Studio. Thanks for sticking around. As a reminder, you can still submit your questions right below the video. It's not too late. But before we start taking questions, I'd like to introduce our trainer, Caroline, as well as her teammate, Chris. Chris is a software engineer on Earth Studio. Welcome, Caroline and Chris. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, thanks.
All right. I have an icebreaker question. I hope you're ready. I'd love to hear from each of you. What's your favorite feature of Earth Studio? Chris, let's start with you.
Okay, yeah. So, like Morgan said, I'm a software engineer. So we've built this sort of animation tool, over years, and my animation skills have gotten a little bit better, but I'm still not a design expert. So for me, the camera target is one of my most beloved features. I can make really nice looking animations with just 3 keyframes. You get like really nice slow tilts and pans past your point of interest, and it really makes a nice dynamic animation without a lot of effort. It's my favorite.
It's a good one. All right, Caroline, you're up.
Yeah, I agree with Chris, actually, in terms of being able to just explore and just feel like a bird. You're like flying in between different locations. It's just beautiful. We saw some examples there, Morgan, didn't we, of like what the animations you can create when you add music and you put it in a beautiful edited package. I think it's lovely. But I have to say, probably one of my favorite features is the ability to see what areas of the globe you can access the 3D cities in. So if it's possible to just screen share, that would be fantastic. And I could give you a little example of how we get to there, guys, because I didn't show you there in my demo. So if we're here on the main interface here, we can see we're in our timeline. If I go up to the top, because I know that somebody asked in the chat there, which areas are going to be 3D? Is my area 3D? How do we know if it is? If we go up to the top here and we click on the View tab, and I scroll down to available 3D areas, you guys at home that are doing this with me, if you tap on that, now you'll be able to see on the globe which areas are in 3D and you can access that imagery. So for example, if we wanted to jump, let's say, to the United Kingdom. And okay, so now in the United Kingdom, you can see all the areas that have this 3D imagery are highlighted with these little yellow borders around them. So if I was to zoom into the imagery here and I zoom into this location, you see all of these areas now. If I was to zoom in and let it load, now this is in 3D. Okay, so we can do this with all the different areas in the world where we have this imagery. So let's say we want to go to New Zealand. And we zoom into New Zealand and you see there again, those areas that have that little yellow border. So if you are unsure about what areas around the globe you can access this imagery, again, you're going to go to view and you're going to toggle that on. You'll see if I toggle that off now, that area, that little yellow border goes. So view, available 3D areas. I'm going to zoom in. And now we can see this beautiful imagery. So it's all in 3D. So yeah, I have to say that's my favorite feature because I just think it makes it a lot easier when we're editing, especially if we're unsure of which areas have been updated recently and which areas haven't. We can just create the beautiful animations there and then without doing too much research in advance.
And just to add one thing, there was a question about about areas that don't have this 3D coverage. Everywhere on the Earth has the satellite imagery, so you'll be able to do that top-down imagery for anywhere on the Earth, and also the 3D geometry. So mountains and things like that will always be in 3D. That available 3D just shows you where we have the buildings, where we've flown the airplanes and captured that 3D data of cities.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for doing that little demo. All right, so let's go to our Q&A. First question is from Anupam. Do we receive a certificate of participation or completion after training today? Excuse me, I can go ahead and answer that. Thanks so much for joining today, Anupam. Unfortunately, we do not give out certificates for completing the training today, but I hope that you can get some tips and tricks from today, kind of practice what you learned and incorporate it into your work, your research, or take what you learned today, the knowledge, and build upon that at the Geo for Good Summit in November. So thanks for your question, and we hope to see you in a couple months. Our next question is from Ted. Resolution is always an issue on closer up images. How does 3D imagery actually work? And is it an illustrated rendering of satellite photographs? Is there a way to improve resolution for closer up animation? And I'll go ahead and add in here, this is also really similar to a question asked down below. So Chris, will you go ahead and answer this one, please?
Yeah, so Google Earth's imagery is created using a combination of satellite imagery, as I mentioned, and then this 3D imagery that gets captured by airplanes. So we fly airplanes low over these cities, use these amazing, crazy camera arrays that capture all the data, and then that gets draped over the 3D geometry that gets captured. So so you end up with this very dynamic 3D scene. That technology that we're using to capture that is constantly getting updated. So there are places that may be in 3D, and then they'll get a new update, and suddenly the imagery is even higher quality. You can zoom in closer, you know, and it's really pretty amazing. Like I really recommend looking at Hong Kong. That was a recent data capture that we did, and the imagery there is just unbelievably amazing. That being said, just in general with Earth Studio, to get kind of the best looking animations, we recommend setting your altitude no lower than about a helicopter height, since that is where it's captured. That will give you the most kind of realistic looking imagery. There's also something you can do if you set your project dimensions a little bit bigger, like up to 4K. That will get another layer of resolution, another level of resolution to load. So you can sometimes get higher quality imagery that way.
Great, thanks, Chris. And Deepanvita, that was similar to the question you asked, so I hope that answered your question. If not, please post in the chat if you'd like a little more clarification on that. All right, next question is from Barry. Can you only request access to cloud rendering once your Earth Studio signup is confirmed? Not currently being brought to the request access page when I click it. Chris.
Yes, so kind of fun, exciting announcement. Just in the last week or so, we rolled out cloud rendering for all users. It had been something we've been working on and experimenting, and we'd been kind of testing it with a small user group, and that's when that form was there. But now it has been opened up for everybody. So once you have access to Earth Studio, you should see that in your render options and try it out. And there's a big feedback button in the upper right corner, because this is something we're still very actively developing. So if you have any questions or issues, hit that button, and the product team will get emails and we can look into it.
I have to say, Chris, that's going to be, such an exciting feature, because most of the people that we teach at the Google News Lab, they're always asking for video rendering, and now it's available without any of that faffing with the form or anything like that. So it's really cool.
Yes, this is very exciting for me. This has been on the Earth Studio roadmap since honestly since day one. This was something that we looked forward to, and we finally kind of got all the pieces working together to be able to do it. Very exciting for me.
Very exciting. See, so the audience who joined us live, aren't you glad you joined today? Bet you weren't expecting that.
Yeah, surprise product announcement.
Awesome. Great. Well, that will be awesome. And as Chris said, please use the feedback button to go ahead and give the team feedback. So next question, is there a way to overlay in Google Earth Studio only? Chris, will you take this question?
Yes. So I assume this is asking about creating these kind of KML place marks and stuff directly in Earth Studio. And unfortunately, that's not available yet. You can do it in Google Earth on the web, Google Earth Pro. You can create the KMLs in there and then export them and import them into Earth Studio. We also have a kind of more advanced feature where you can export your animation into After Effects, into Adobe After Effects, and use that for doing kind of these post labels and adding annotations and things like that onto your map. Some of the examples from the new studios that Caroline shared in her video, they're using that. So you can kind of get these very dynamic labels where you can do, pretty much anything you want with them. So.
Great. All right. Okay, so I think, Caroline, you're going to show us another little demo here. So to set it up, is it possible to include maps you create in other tools like Google Earth or Earth Engine in your Earth Studio videos? So Caroline, I think you're going to show us how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, by this point, Morgan, I love a demo. So I'm going to show you guys what I mean by KML, KMZ files. Yeah. So essentially, guys, in those examples that I showed, some of them had KML files that were added to them, which are essentially an overlay to your video where you can add further context to what you're trying to explain to the audience. So, for example, let's say you're trying to display geographic data over the animation, or you want to just add points or add, extra context, as I say, you can just import your own KML or KMZ files in Earth Studio. So it can be really useful. Let's say you are creating animations for educational purposes, for example, or you want to highlight points of interest, certain regions on a map. Now you can create these KML files using an XML or simple text editor. If you're kind of new to those things, the simplest form of KML documents are those that can be authored directly within Google Earth. So, as I've put there on the screen, things like place marks, ground overlays, paths, polygons, things like that. So I'm going to just give you a quick demo of how you would add it. Now, adding this into Earth Studio is actually very, very simple to do, and it can, really kind of highlight and make your animation so much livelier as well. Just kind of add that kind of sprinkling, finishing touch on there as well. So I'm going to give you an example of how you can use a KML file to show the Caldor fire boundary from September the 8th. Okay, so the fire started in August, as we know. So if I just jump into Google Earth, so we're in Google Earth Studio, as you can see. Now, let's say, for example, we wanted to start a blank project. As you can see here, I've got a completely blank editor down there at the bottom. Now, let's say if we're just going to jump to California. Okay, so here we are at California, and we're going to set my first keyframe. So remember, we're going to tap on that diamond icon here to keyframe all those attributes. Now, let's say further on in our animation, as you see, we're doing this from a blank project now. So we're not here in a template. We're doing this a completely blank project. Very, very similar way of doing things. You just don't have that initial step at the beginning. So we're going to scroll to where we want our second keyframe to be. So let's go up here to the search bar, and we're going to search for Caldor. Okay, so as you can see here, I've jumped and zoomed in on that location. So if I just zoom out a little bit, set the satellite imagery to where I want it to be. And then I'm going to tap that keyframe all attributes section again. So as you can see here now, my animation is just going to zoom in to this location. Okay, so that's fine. So we have our initial animation. But if we want to add an overlay on top of this, what we're just going to do is we're going to go up to the top and we're going to tap on import KML. So your KML file can be stored on your computer or on Google Drive. So if you've got it on your computer, as I have here, you're just going to tap into it and upload that KML file. So as you can see now, as soon as I press that, it's been added to this little box here on the left-hand side that's called the overlay panel. Okay, so this is obviously on your viewport, and I can toggle this on or off. Now, if I just zoom out a little bit on that map there, I'm just going to reposition. So now you can see the boundary of the fire as it stood on September the 8th. So I'm just going to re-keyframe that. So as you can see here now, when I zoom into the globe, I have that outline that I'd already previously created outside of Google Earth Studio, and I'm zooming in and I can see that location as it stands. Now, of course, this is just an overlay on top of the animation that you've already got. So you can add in as many keyframes as you want. You can add the easing, you know, go into the curve editor, whatever you want to do, it's completely fine. You can do things in any order. Now, at some point, you might want to add, you know, an animation to the opacity, so add a keyframe in there. So let's say, for example, you didn't want the border of the fire to be on your screen at all the whole time of your animation. You only wanted it to appear as soon as you've zoomed into the area. So, for example, you could go to this little drop-down menu. So tap on those three dots, the vertical three dots there, and you can go down to keyframe opacity. Now, on your attributes menu down here on the left-hand side, you'll see here at the bottom, we have the overlay, and it's already been added to that attributes menu. So this is where you can get little bit more creative with your animation. You can see here it's at 100%. So that's the opacity. Now, if I wanted that, you know, overlay to just kind of fade in really gradually, I could just set myself a keyframe for that opacity. So let's say when my map is zoomed in to Caldor, I'm just going to tap here once. And I can tap again maybe later on. So I've added two different keyframes, and you know, I'm going to set the value of that keyframe to 0. Okay, so now you can see I don't have that overlay there until I get to this point, and it's going to gradually fade in. So you see I've set two keyframes. The first keyframe was at 0%, and as I bring that playhead along, it's going to appear. So then my whole animation, I'm zooming in from outside of California into Caldor, and now I'm going to get my overlay, my KML file. It's going to show up on screen. Okay, so if you have sub elements within your KML file, you can also see them here that appear within a tree hierarchy down at the bottom. Now you can choose to toggle this on or off at any point. So you can get really creative with it. So these KML files, obviously this is quite a basic one. It's just like an, you know, from a bird's eye view, for satellite view that you can see. But it is worth experimenting with these, obviously creating them outside of Google Earth Studio and importing them and bringing them into Earth Studio. Now it is worth noting here that imported KML files are quite big. They're quite large in the file size. So essentially, Google Earth Studio doesn't embed them directly into your projects. They are stored in your Google Drive. So essentially, if you save your project to the cloud, it means that you can access your project with the KML files wherever you happen to be. So as long as you can log into your account, if you can just access any file and edit it wherever you happen to be. So it is quite useful in that respect. So when you go to export this, it will export with that KML on as well. Okay, so you can have a little bit of fun with that. So that's a KML file. And as I say, like we've seen a lot of people use KML files in different ways. So for example, plotting areas on the map, having them appear, reappear and disappear as they're moving through, swooping over different areas in between buildings. So you can get really creative with your KML files. So if you are experimenting with it, definitely give those a go. And there are some amazing tutorials as well on our website, so you can go and check those out.
Thanks, Caroline. And one quick last question here. What's the maximum length for an animation in Earth Studio?
Yeah, the maximum length is an hour. It's worth noting you can export the footage up to 4K for that. So obviously you can get beautiful footage and output resolution. There are a few limitations for cloud rendering. I'm not sure, Morgan, whether you can add that link to the chat. That would be fantastic. Thank you. Sure. So there are a few limitations on there. So things like a daily render quota if you are going to be uploading to the cloud, for example. But you can check those out on the list on the link that Morgan's put in there. But yeah, an hour. So, I mean, it depends how you're going to use it for. I mean, a lot of people will end up using some of the animations they get from Earth Studio for tiny little segments of longer videos, as we saw in some of those examples. You might not necessarily use this animation tool for an entire video, but you might choose to. So kind of depends what you're working on. But yeah, we're always interested to see how you guys are putting the tool into practice. So if you do have any great examples of how you're actually going to use this, we would love to see them.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for joining today's session. A special thank you to Caroline and Chris for lending your expertise in our Q&A. Thank you to the audience for the engaging questions to our speakers as well. We hope you're inspired to keep learning and tune into one of our future events. We have a number of training sessions in the lead up to Geo for Good. Our next live Q&A is Earth Engine 101, taking place on Tuesday. And lastly, don't forget to register for Geo for Good. The summit is happening in November, and we are so excited to see all of you there. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.